There's been an interesting news story recently that can kind of help clear up, let's say, a misconception that a lot of people have over what it means to break the third commandment. If you aren't familiar with the Ten Commandments, the first is to have no other gods. The second is to make no graven images. And the third is to not take the Lord's name in vain. And many people throughout the history since Moses brought the law down from the summit of Mount Sinai have been confused about what that means. The Jews believed that this meant that the name of the Lord was so holy that they couldn't even write it. And so they invented the tetragrammaton, the YHWH, as kind of a stand-in for the Lord's name anywhere that appears in Scripture. And as a result, his name has been lost from the text. We actually do not know what God's name is because they wouldn't write it. Eventually, the vowels from the term Adonai would be inserted in between those consonants, the YHWH, and that would end up being Yahweh, which would eventually be Jehovah. And so that's where all of that comes from. It's stemming from people's, let's say, anxiety about not wanting to break this commandment, but at the same time, obviously, not really understanding it. Others have thought it meant something involving swearing, cursing, foul language. And so anytime someone invokes either the name God or the name Jesus as a means of cursing, swearing, just, crass language. And that's not it either. What it actually is that it's akin to what Nadab and Abihu did, in which they tried to offer unapproved fire on the altar of God, and literally the fire broke out and destroyed them immediately. Or the sons of Korah, who led a rebellion against God and Abraham, and the ground swallowed them. Or Achan, who thought that the things separated for God alone could be something that he could have as well. And so he stole some things that were in the rubble of Jericho. And as a result, not only he, but his entire family lost their lives. Or the whole nation of Israel, through its repeated rebellion against God and their refusal to follow God's commands. Or we have Sennacherib, who from outside the wall of Jerusalem read aloud in plain language that everyone could hear, "Don't listen to Hezekiah and his promises from your God, because has anyone ever, and all the kings that I have conquered, did any of their gods save them either?" Yet the prophet of God told Hezekiah, no, Sennacherib is going to go back home the same way that he came, and he's going to be assassinated when he arrives back home. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. It's Pharaoh shaking his fist against God, refusing to let the people of Israel go, even though he had been admonished multiple times, to the point where it cost him his very own son in the end. It's Nebuchadnezzar seeing a statue in a dream that was given to him by God, warning him about what was to come, and seeing that dream, and instead of understanding its meaning, that his reign was temporary and that it wouldn't last forever, made for himself a golden image of himself and told everyone that they needed to bow to it. Because he did this, because he looked over his kingdom and thought that it's the greatest, God humbled him for 7 years and made him eat straw like an ox, drove him out into the wilderness. It's his son, Belshazzar, taking the sacred things from the temple and thinking that they could be used as common arraignments for his own feasting in his own honor. Said that it's Herod stepping forward to accept the praise that is only due to God. And this is that, in fact, worms devoured him from within and that he died on the spot. Why am I recapping all this? All of that is, of course, found in the Bible. Because there was a Turkish lawmaker just this past week whom was giving a rousing speech saying that God was going to punish Israel for its ongoing war against Gaza, that they would not escape the wrath of God. He gave this speech, finished it, stepped aside, had a heart attack, and died on the spot. That's what it means to take the Lord's name in vain. And lest you should think that only happened back then. That only happened to Ananias and Sapphira. That only happened to the 7 sons of Sceva. That only happens in the ancient of history. The entire nation of Turkey has just been reminded of who the one true God is and what it means when you misuse his name, that there are in fact consequences for that behavior.